Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
If you didn't catch it, the reason we are giving thanks and we're saying Tov Lahodot as we do every Friday, but especially tonight, is because this week was Thanksgiving. And I assume that most of us, if not all of us, celebrated yesterday with some kind of festive meal. Even if you didn't this year, my guess is that at some point you have observed Thanksgiving at some point in years past. But out of curiosity, I'm genuinely curious if any of you have ever observed a Thanksgiving Seder. Have any of you ever had a Thanksgiving Seder? So much for Reformed Jews here. Okay, fine. It's not a new idea, folks. It's actually existed for quite some time. But after September 11, 2001, amidst the patriotic ferment in this country, there was a trend among American rabbis to advocate for such seders. And you can find Thanksgiving liturgy online from that time and actually from well before then. In 1945, during another wave of patriotism among American Jews, Rabbi Desola Pool of the Orthodox Synagogue She'aret Israel, the oldest congregation in America, published a designated service for Thanksgiving with Psalms of Hallel as its centerpiece. And even before then, Jews had a special relationship to this holiday. The earliest Puritan Thanksgiving meals were based on a Protestant reading of our festival of Sukkot. And more importantly, when George Washington first declared Thanksgiving to be a national holiday in 1789, he specifically removed the ritual's Protestant overtones so that Catholics and Jews might observe it, which they clearly did and still do. Thanksgiving offers us a chance to gather with loved ones and practice gratitude. It's also an opportunity to consider themes of justice and injustice, revisiting the founding myths of America and to face hard truths about the ways in which our country was born out of violence against Native Americans, enslaved people, and others, even as it also provided safe refuge for so many of our ancestors. All things considered, that does kind of sound like a Passover Seder, at least a little bit, potentially to ask questions about those things and share conversation among loved ones. But still, most of us did not spend yesterday probing the past and seeking new answers for how to live as American Jews right now. There's no shame in that. We all deserve a day off to relax. Thanksgiving is blessedly not Yom Kippur. But I think that Thanksgiving for Jews can and maybe should be what the Thanksgiving Seder offers, an opportunity to think deeply about the ways in which we are both American and Jewish. This country is, as we know, a historical aberration for our people, a place of supreme possibility and prosperity, but also a place where it is so easy for us to forget our uniqueness. We are always caught in between the particular and the universal, in between obligation and freedom, in between thousands of years of our history and the many unprecedented choices before us vis-a-vis our future. With or without some DIY Haggadah, this Thanksgiving Shabbat is a chance for us to locate ourselves in that in-betweenness. This week's Parsha Tol'dot focuses on Isaac, a patriarch who embodies the in-between. This is actually the only Torah portion in which we meet Isaac as an adult. After multiple parshiot where we read of Abraham, the first Hebrew and the founder of monotheism, and before next week's reading through the rest of Genesis, where we'll encounter his son Jacob, renamed Israel. This week, we get one shot at knowing Isaac. He's better known for almost being sacrificed than he is for anything he does in adulthood, except in relation to his children, Jacob and Esau. But as he plays the role of generational bridge between his father and son, Isaac is also known for one important action: digging wells, specifically the wells of his father. Vayashov Yitzchak v'yachpor et be'erot hamayim asher chofru b'mei Abraham aviv. Isaac dug anew the wells which had been dug in the time of Abraham, his father. Now, here I am again. It's Parshat Tol'dot. I'm talking about wells. I am obsessed with this feature of Isaac in this week's Torah portion. Every year when I read this text, I'm struck by the Freudian significance of that verse, that he dug anew the wells of his father. That Isaac, tormented by the memory of his father binding him to an altar years before, spent so much time dredging up the past, literally, and we can imagine abstractly. The Midrash tells us that Isaac became blind at the moment when he was bound in the Akedah, but that afterwards he laid claim to a different sort of vision, the kind that comes when you dig and redig your past, when you seek introspection, perhaps, beyond seeing only what's before you. This is the task of anyone caught in between, to not only see the obvious facts before you, but to look inside oneself and find a way of moving forward. Perhaps then, for us as a people in between, the invitation to us on this Shabbat of Thanksgiving weekend is to look deeper inside ourselves for some bit of truth about ourselves, about our relationships, and about our values, about what any of it means for being an American Jew in 2024, and to discuss it with the people closest to us tonight and throughout tomorrow. Examining this parsha, a 19th century Hasidic sage known as the Sfat Emet teaches that in the book of Genesis, a well is rarely just a well, emphasizing the fact that the Hebrew for well, be'er, also means to explain. At the beginning of Deuteronomy, the word is used to say that Moses agreed to explain be'er, the Torah. The Sfat Emet makes this connection to say that even before Moses explained the Torah by giving it to the Israelites, even before the Torah was given as a complete unit at Mount Sinai, the patriarchs of Genesis intuited Torah from their own lives. In his view, there was a Torah before the Torah, which existed in the insights and lived experiences of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Sfat Emet points to 3 cases of wells in the patriarch stories to demonstrate the unique wisdom that each forefather espoused. The Sfat Emet reads the wells of the patriarchs to be symbols of how a person can draw out wisdom from their own lives, wisdom of love, fear, and truth, respectively. And in fact, only after the patriarchs draw out this sort of wisdom can the Torah be given to a later generation of their descendants. Remarkably, he says, if both Torah wisdom and the wisdom that comes from life itself are equally important, we can't forget that the wisdom gleaned from one's own life is the one that emerges first in the Torah narrative. It's kind of incredible to hear from a Hasidic Rabbi that traditional texts and lived experiences are both essential fonts of wisdom. And with this in mind, we can read that Isaac's wisdom, his explanation, his Torah, is bound up in his own revisiting of the past. So may it be for us, revisiting the wells of prior generations, redigging our relationships in hopes of learning some explanation for why we think or feel or act in the way that we do, as Americans and as Jews, with both identities complementing the other, God willing. We may find that in our digging up the past, we find values that suit us as well as a new approach toward reconciling our identities moving forward. After Isaac redigs the first well, the Philistines in that land get upset and claim that the water is not rightfully his. He redigs a second well, again provoking the Philistines' ire. But before redigging a third well, Isaac moves to a different place. And in fact, digging this third well presents no problem at all. So he says, now at last, the Eternal One has granted us ample space. In this case, he's still redigging the wells, but he's doing it in a different space. The verb used to describe his movement, chet pe resh, is only ever used in Genesis in connection to Abraham or Isaac. The action is something that binds them together, but the plot is different. It seems the text is hinting to us that even though Isaac remains bound to the memory of his father's actions, Isaac's process of introspection eventually works out for him, at least a little. And after he tries a few times in pursuit of that wisdom, eventually he gets to the place that is expansive for him, a place where he can live freely in all of his identities. And this too is our task. On this Shabbat of Thanksgiving weekend, as we live freely and expansively as American Jews, drawing as we do from so many different wells, even without a formal Seder, we may use this space and this time on Shabbat to meditate on what it means to be American Jews with unique roles in history, and to consider how to hold on to both identities in ways that feel good to us in the present moment. And though it may feel like all we do is revisit the same wells over and over, perhaps we too will get to a space that is expansive and offer thanks. Shabbat Shalom.